Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, students. Okay, today we are going to learn the chapter called the team building. Okay, before starting with the team building, you know the word team building. What is meant by the team building? We need team building everywhere. We need team building for planning, organizing, cooperating, coordinating. We need a team building everywhere. Whenever we work in the organizations, when we work as a team, we will get a more success. If you want to a success, you have to work as a team. So for the team building, we will learn the team building through the one small story which uh, you have learned from your childhood. The name of the story is the tortoise and the hare. This story you may heard at the time of when you was a child. Okay, the name of the story is the tortoise and the hare. We will understand what is meant by the teamwork, the importance of the teamworks through the short story, the tortoise and the hare. Okay, uh, the story started with there was once upon a time there was a tortoise and hare, and they had an argument, or there has a quarrel between them. And what was the quarrel? What was the questions between them? That the tortoise said, I am the fastest runner. Then the hare said, I am the fastest runner. So there is a quarrel between the hare and tortoise. Okay, this is the story which you have heard. Okay, what happens the next? Okay, now they have quarrel. So then they want to settle their quarrel on a something. So they decided to settle the argument with a race. They agreed on a route and started of the race. Now what they do? They have decided the route, and they have settled their argument by starting the race between them. So they decide, okay, okay, the race, okay, they decide the route. Now they have started the race. Okay, the hare shot ahead and ran briskly for some time. Then, seeing that he was far ahead of the tortoise, he thought that he would sit under a tree for some time and relax before continuing the race. And as usual, this time the hare runs fastly, and he goes near to the destination, and he wins the race, and he thinks that the tortoise cannot catch me. Okay. After some time, the hare sat under the tree and soon fell asleep. Okay. The hare decides that tortoise cannot win the race. Okay, the hare is sleeping under the tree, and now the tortoise comes and he overtook the hare. Okay, now the hare woke up and realized that he has lost the race. Okay, this part of the story we are very much familiar. We know this part of the story. Okay, from this story, what we have learned, the moral of this story is the slow and steady win the race. Okay. The moral of the story is slow and steady win the race. This is the moral of the story. Okay, this is the version of the story that we all are grown up with. Okay, this is the part of the story you know very well that. Okay, but story still continues. Story doesn't end here. Story still continues. What happened next? Okay, now this time the hare was disappointed because he has lost the race. Okay, the problem comes of the ego. So this time they done some soul searching. Okay, he realized that he has lost the race only because he had been a overconfidence. This time where hare realized that he was the overconfidence, that's why he has lost his race. Now again they decide. Okay. So again this time he challenged the tortoise. Challenged the tortoise for the another race, and the tortoise agreed for the another race. Now they again make a settlement that we will have another race for the same thing. This time the hare went all out and ran without stopping from the start to finish, and he won the several miles. Okay, this time who wins the race? The hare wins the race. Okay, this is the second time they have the race. Now, what is the moral of the story of this part of the story? Okay. Okay, the moral of the story of this part of the story is that the fast and consistent will always beat the slow and steady. In the earlier part of the story, we have learned that slow and steady win the race. But who is the fast and consistent? Okay, in second race, we have learned that you have to not only a fast, you have to be a consistent in your work. Fast and consistent will always beat the slow and steady. The best example is if you have two people in your organization, one is slow, methodological, reliable, and the other is fast and still reliable at what he does. The fast and reliable chap will consistently climb the organization ladder faster than the slow and methodological chap. What is the moral of the story? When you are working in any organizations, if you are fast, okay, if you are fast, it is not useful. You have to be a consistent in your work, then you can go the higher level in the organizations. You can climb the ladder of success if you are a fast and consistent in your work. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, it is good to be a slow and steady, but it is a better to be fast and reliable. Okay, this is one of the most important sentence. Okay, but the story doesn't end here. Story still continues. Okay, what happens in the next part of the story? Okay, we will see what happens the next part of the story. Okay, now this time in the first part of the story, okay, there is a race between the tortoise and hare. That time tortoise win the race and hare was the overconfidence. Then again second time they have the race, okay, on the same route. Second time the hare wins the race by several miles. So the story doesn't end here. Now this time the tortoise did some thinking this time and realized that there no way he can beat the hare in a race the way it was currently formatted. The way it was currently formatted means the route they have used for their race. Now this time the tortoise has done some soul searching. Okay, what happens next? Now the tortoise is thinking that how can I win the race? Now he has done some soul searching. He is thinking that how can I win the race? Now tortoise has already done the soul searching and he thought for a while and then he challenged the hare to another race but on a slightly different route, and the hare agreed. Now the tortoise again given a challenge to the hare for the another race, and now they have decided the different route. The same, they have decided the race but on a different route. Can we have another race, and this time we will go through a different route. So they have a race again but on a different route. What happens the next? Next slide please. Okay, now this time here is the starting point and the goal is here. The destination is on the other side of the river. Okay, so now they started the race. Okay, very interesting. They started off in keeping with his self-made commitment to be consistently fast. Okay, in the second part of the story, they understand that fast and consistent will always win the race. But now the hare is the fast and consistent. Okay, the hare took off and ran at a top speed until he come to a broad river. Okay, because destination is in the another side of the river. The finishing line was a couple of kilometers on the other side of the river. Now the hare is seeing the destination on the another side of the river. What happens the next? Okay, now the hare sat there wondering what to do. The meantime, the tortoise trundled along, got into the river, swam to the opposite bank and continued to walking and finish the race. So the hare cannot go in the water and he cannot swim. to go the another side of the river to reach the destination of the race, or a goal of the race. So what should I do? Now the here again thinking, what should I do? Next. Now the moral of the story. Okay, what is the moral of the story? Any guesses? Okay. Okay, this time this part of the story, the moral of the story of this part of the story is, first identify your core competency, then change the playing field to suit your core competencies. First we have to understand our core competencies. Okay, the competency means the things in which we are good. First we have to understand our level, our power, then we have to challenge the another person. First identify your core competency and then change the playing field to suit to your core competencies. In the same way, if you are working in an organization, if you are working in a multinational company, if you are working in any organizations, if you are a good speaker, make sure create opportunities to give presentations that enable the senior management to notice you. Means what? We have to understand our core competencies. If you are good speaker, you can give the maximum presentations in the organization. You can be noticed by the management. So first you have to, what is the intentions of, or what is the moral of the story? We have to understand the core competencies and then we have to do the things. Okay. Next slide. Okay, if your strength is analysis, make sure you do some sort of research, make a report and send it to the upstairs. Means if you are good in report writing, you can make the reports and you can send to the higher management or upstairs. So the most important sentence, working to your strength will not only get you noticed, but to also create opportunities for the growth and advancement. Means if you are a good speaker, if you are giving a different presentations in the organization, the management will notice you, they will recognize you, and they will give you the extra perks in terms of the salary and all these things and increments. So we have to understand our core competencies. Next slide please. Okay, if you think the story ended here, the story doesn't ended here. The story still hasn't ended here. The story still continues. Okay, this time the hare and the tortoise by this time had become a pretty good friends, and they did some thinking together and both realized that the last race could have been run much better. Now the hare and tortoise become the good friends. They have become the good pretty friends, and they realized that the last race could have been the run much better. Okay, what happened the next? Now again they decided the race on the route which they have made a last rest. Okay, there is a river between the starting point and the destinations. So they decided to do the last race again, but to run as a team this time, because now they are running as a team. They are running as a team because they have become a good pretty friends this time. Great. I think we could do it much better if we two help each other. Okay, so now they decided to help each other. So what happens the next if we help each other? Now this time they started off, and this time the hare carried the tortoise till the river bank. When they started the race, this time the hare carried the tortoise on his back till river bank, and the destination in the another side of the bank. So what happened next? When river comes, the tortoise took over and swam across with the hare on his back. So destination is on the another side of the river. Okay, on the opposite bank, the hare again carried the tortoise, and they reached the finishing line together, and they both felt a greater sense of satisfaction than they would felt earlier. Now they have not only reached, they both has reached the destinations of the river, or they have reached the destination of their race, because this time both win the race. Okay, what they have got? They have got the satisfaction in their mind. Okay. Now what is the moral of the story? Any guesses? So we will see the moral of the story. Okay, it is a good to be individually brilliant and to have a strong core competencies, but unless you are able to work in a team and harness each other's core competencies, you will always perform below par, because there will be always be situations at which you will do poorly and someone else does well. So example is that if everyone has a different competencies, some will be a good in speaking, someone will be a good in writing. When you are working in the organizations, if one people is good in speaking, okay, when the situations come of speaking, that person can handle the situations. When it comes to the writing part, that time the person who is a good in writing, he can handle that part. So if we help each other, we respect the core competencies of each other, we will get a more satisfaction, we will do the work more efficiently than we individually do. Next slide please. Okay. The teamwork is mainly about a situational leadership, letting the person with the relevant core competencies for a situations take the leadership. Okay, this is one of the feature of the teamwork. In a teamwork, there is a situational leadership. What is the situational leadership? As earlier I told you that if sometimes situations comes, we have to give the presentation in front of the management. That time the person who is good in speaking, he can become a leader at that time. When he is giving the presentations, if he is good in a presentations, he is giving a presentations, means that time he becomes the leader of the team. He becomes the leader of the team. When comes to the writing part in front of the management, the person who is good in a writing, he can become the leader at that time. So what happens? When situations comes of the writing, the person who has a good competencies in the writing skills, he becomes the leader at that time. When person with the speaking skills, he becomes the leader at the situations comes of the presentations and all these things. This is one of the feature of the teamwork, situational leadership. Means situation changes according to the requirement of the situations. Next slide. Okay, we have seen the moral of the story of the different part of the story. Okay, there are some more lessons to be learned, or we can learn from this story. Okay, which are this lesson? Any guesses? You can guess which lessons we have learned from this story. I have given you different examples. Okay, I have given you the different part of this story. Okay, we will guess which are the different lessons or morals of the story which we have learned from this story. The first, first note that neither the hare nor the tortoise gave up after failures. So what is the most important thing? Never give up after the failures. If in a first time you are doing something and if you get a failures, don't give up. The hare decided to work harder and put in a more effort of his failure. Whenever we get a failure in a first time, we have to never give up. We have to do a more hard work. We will get the success. The tortoise changed his strategy because he was already working as hard as he could. So these are the one most important lesson from this story. Okay, when we think about our life, when faced with failures, sometimes it is appropriate to work harder and put in a more efforts. sometimes it is appropriate to change strategy and try something different, and sometimes it is appropriate to do the both. Okay, as per the situations we have to change. What is the meaning of this sentence? We have to change the as per our situations. In a life, we have to change according to the situation. Sometimes we have to come back, sometimes too we have to go ahead. It depends upon the situations. We have to decide the strategy according to the life. In the same way, in the corporate world, when we want the success, we have to change the situations according to the. The hare and tortoise also learned the another vital lessons. That is the most important lesson from this story. When we stop competing against a rival and instead start competing against the situation, you perform or we perform far better than the when we compete against the person. It is the most important situation, most important statement. If you remember this statement, you will get a more success. Okay, that is the meaning of the team building. When we stop competing against the rival, instead start competing against the situation, we perform for a better. Means, what is the meaning of this sentence? Actually, we Indian people, what we have the mentality, we against compete against the person. When difficult situations comes, we consider the persons as our rival. We consider that person as our enemy. When we start thinking that this situation is my enemy, this situation is my rival, then you work according to the. If you face the situation or you work against the situations, then you will get a more success. You will get a more satisfaction. First, what we have to do, we have to stop competing against the person. We have to compete against the situations. Okay. When you go in Japan, the people always compete against the situation, not against the person. So they will get a more success. They will get a more satisfaction also. Not only a success with the satisfaction. Next slide. Okay, there is one example. When Roberto, okay, he was the CEO of Coca-Cola in 1980s. He was faced with intense competition from Pepsi that was eating into Coke's growth. His executives were Pepsi focused and intent on increasing market share of 0.1% at a time. So Roberto decided to stop competing against the Pepsi, instead compete against the situation of 0.1% growth. What was the moral of the story? When we stop competing against the person, okay, we will get a more success and more satisfaction. Same things the Roberto has done. Okay, he competed against the 0.1%, not against the Pepsi company. So we have to do the same thing. We have to compete against the situation, not against the person. Okay, what he has done? He asked his executives to what was the average fluid intake of an American per day. The answer was 14 ounces. What was Coke share of that? 2 ounces. Roberto said Coke needed a larger share of that market. He has analyzed the market. The competition wasn't Pepsi. It was the water, tea, coffee, milk, fruit juices that went into the remaining 12 ounces. The public should reach for a Coke whenever they felt like drinking something. To this end, Coke put up the vending machines at a very street corner. Sales took a quantum jump and Pepsi has never quite caught up the since. So this is the importance of the our thinking in a team building. We have to compete against the situation, not against the person. So Roberto never competed against the Pepsi. He has competed against the situation, that is 0.1%. He has competed against the 0.1%. He has analyzed the things which are needed to growth for his organization. Okay, to sum up, the story of the hare and tortoise teaches us so many things. Okay, things. Okay, the first is never give up when faced with the failure. This was the moral of the story of the first part of the story. Never give up when faced with the failure. At the first time, who has faced the failure? That the hare has faced the failure in the first race. Fast and consistent will always beat slow and steady. The second race, in a second race, who wins the second race? The hare wins the second race. Because he was a fast and consistent, so he always beat the slow and steady. Slow and steady was the slow and steady. The tortoise was the slow and steady. Work to your competencies. Means whenever we are doing anything, we have to understand our competencies. We have to understand our strengths and we have to perform on that situation. Compete against the situation, not against the rival. That is the most important thing. Already we have taken the example of the Coca-Cola company. We have to compete against the situation, not against the person. So then we will get more success and more satisfaction. Pooling resources and working as a team will always beat individual performance. What we have seen in the last part of the story. When we work together, we will get a more success, we will get a more better performances than the individual. So I hope you will